go ahead and get started so we can get out of here. Welcome. Once again, okay, you got that going? Yeah, okay. All right. Holy smoke, man. You know, I thought you would at least sit up here, you know. I'm talking to the lawyer, yeah.
Why are you trying to downgrade him?
And how about Gene? Yeah. How about both of them? Anyhow. All right, I hope you guys can see that sitting over here. Yeah, we kind of moved over here because this thing, the projector up here, is not the projector. They don't have the right cord for the, what is it? It's all green over here or something like that. And the guy who's the point of contact for all this equipment keeps trying to order it, and they keep telling him it costs too much money. So we're stuck with what we got. Okay, this is the March Aero Club safety meeting. Yeah, I every year I always have to be careful about that. And my name's Roger Mann. I'm the safety officer, and then of course Bob Pierce, who's the Aero Club manager. He just walked out. He doesn't like to sit in on these things. And then we got John Law, who's our chief pilot, and we got Randy Ball, who's our T-34 check pilot. Likes to, well, I haven't seen him fly a lot, but he's trying to. He's retired, for crying out loud now, and so he's now taking advantage. This is his first year of retirement, so I know how it is. The first year of retirement, you just try to get away with doing nothing if you can help it, but it doesn't work after the first year. It really.
So far, so good.
So far, yeah. So, and then let's see, Fred, I guess, is sick. He's one of our, he can do the T-34 checkout, but he can only do pilot and command checkout. So in other words, you have to be pilot in command. In other words, your currency cannot have run out. And that's because he doesn't have a medical. But he is an instructor, and he can check people out in the airplane. And then Alan Shanahan, he's a, I guess he wasn't here, yeah. And then we got wing safety sitting back there in the back, in the corner over there. And got Bill Edelman. He's our liaison between the 452nd and us. And without further ado, move forward here. Okay, we usually do a routine right at the beginning. We usually introduce new people. That means people who are new. So, have you joined the club today, or?
I'm waiting for my medical.
Okay, all right. Well, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm George Carlson, retired from the Navy, and I was flying T-34 quite a bit at North Island Flying Club until it grounded the fleet. And my wife thought I was getting too old to fly, so that ended that. And my grandson Gabe, he's got a private ticket.
Okay.
And the plan was we were going to come up here from San Diego and ride with him in the Cessna. And I figured my wife's no longer around to bug me about my flying. So I decided I'd renew my license. It'd be more fun for us to go fly in the T-34. That's all I flew in the flying club.
Okay. Okay,
Thanks.
good.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, somebody else who's new. Yeah,
Well, he sort of introduced me. I'm Dave Day. I'm a load here, the 729th, had my private. I haven't flown in about 2.5 years now, but I'm trying to get back up and do a little bit of flying. So maybe flying the T-34 with Grandpa over here. We'll see.
Yeah, welcome. Oh, there's a stranger, Scott Schwartz, and got a few. Hi, it's been a while. Okay, anybody else that's new? Anybody else that's not new but just didn't stand up and introduce themselves before? Yeah, there you go. Stand up and remember I told you this was going to happen.
I'm Willie. I'm here with the Proficiency AES, right next door. It's been about, like 6 years since I joined the Aero Club back at Deal and stuff. And I finally finished my bachelor's degree. I figured I had the time. I picked up the cash, so I just started up beginning of this month with John. And it's been great just trying to get my license and get up there and start flying.
Okay, welcome. Okay, Malcolm, welcome.
I wanted to say something to all you guys. When they put a card out for you to sign, to get well, whatever, you take it pretty much for granted, but I want to thank everybody that signed my card. It really made a difference. I was in a lot of pain and it was not very pleasant. And that actually cheered me up. I didn't see Roger's name on there, but that's
Well, yeah, that's because I wasn't here. Well, thank you, Malcolm. Okay, anybody else?
My co-pilot Louie here.
I'd like to thank everybody for the card I got. I signed it myself last Aero meeting.
Yeah, yes, you did. That's because you didn't pay attention, did you?
Well, when it said, who's it for? I remember you saying that, and I said, well, I'll have to let you know later. I said, holy crap, he's saying that.
Then I figured it out.
Anyway, well, I cheered you up today. At least you got cheered up.
Twice, yeah.
Okay, is there anybody that just this new pilots and ratings is anything from? This includes even if you fly an Air Force plane or a Navy plane, even, or anything else. Have you soloed? Has anybody soloed here recently? I know that we had Emily Hares.
I just got a text from her, she couldn't make it.
She couldn't make it. Yeah, of course not. Yeah, she probably knew that I'd make her stand up. Anybody else has gotten anything, you know, upgraded, downgraded, FAA violations, any of that stuff? Yeah, so, let's see. Well, you started, let's see, Andrew, you started flying the 182, didn't you?
A bit ago.
Yeah? How long you been doing that?
6 or 8 months or so.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Old stuff to him now. It's nothing new.
Nothing new. Gee whiz, man. When that starts happening. Yeah. Okay, experiences. That's where you kind of have your own story a little bit. It can be anything. It can be an Air Force plane, Navy plane, or an Aero Club plane, or your own airplane. Anything that you might have to offer. I know George always has something because he's an airport manager. He sees a lot of interesting things.
Well, I got called out twice on Sunday. First one was, I don't know, some of you people that might have seen this Phantom race with this station over there. Fallbrook, the race in Reno.
Oh, yeah.
And it was attempting to take off, runway 18. It didn't have an airspeed indicator, and he had aborted to take off and took his property in and hurt. And the next incident, I got home and kicked back. Another call was an 836. Blew his nose tire on landing. So,
Oh, wow.
so the flower pot.
Oh, gee.
Moral of the story is hold the nose off.
Yeah, hold the nose off, yeah. Yeah. How long is that runway? Hey, George? How long's your runway there?
2160.
2160. Okay.
Use the flower pot at the end, it's a little longer.
It goes with forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Each time I gone with General Ball, something happened to Ball. He was playing
Yeah, but you usually pick up lunch, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Went down pretty good after you.
And also too, you know, John down here is always looking for somebody to get a Catalina Check Out. You know, as long as you buy lunch and pay for the landing fees there, he'd gladly check you out there. So,
Looking for a buffalo burger.
a buffalo burger, yeah, yeah. Okay, and Bob's going to get up and he's going to talk. And if he talks too long, just start booing. We're going to run over a real quick SOP, and then we're going to talk tonight. Have you really planned everything? And you'll know what I mean by that when we get there. Okay, Aero Club Manager.
Anybody missing any parts? I've got a pair of glasses found out. I almost drove home today at the fuel tank. Okay.
You may need a pair of glasses.
And if you can identify this,
It's a
there's some
black
glass.
case.
Well, there's colored glasses inside, so the key is if this is yours, tell me what color of glasses you're missing.
Oh, let's go with green.
Beep. Okay, wrong. And then I've looking for Alan Shanahan. I think I found his someone found his antenna in one of the aircraft, so I'll have to pass that on to him at the CAP meeting. Okay, a couple things real quick. I covered this at the standards meeting here. On credit cards, Roger's having difficulty in credit cards. So all you need, people, if you got a question about filling out the form, I know the instructors are supposed to be helping you understand how to do this so that when you get turned loose, you won't make mistakes. But you're not putting the 3-digit code on there, and in some cases, we're not getting that credit card slip signed. So help out Roger because it becomes a real issue here. We're having an issue with getting in a hurry and not putting the gas in the gas log. Hi, Alex. And you're putting it onto the invoice, but then the next person comes out and says, "Oh, the numbers aren't matching what's in the machine out at the gas pump." And then we have to go back and research who flew last. We look on all the boards that we have, and then we go back in the computer and we try and calculate how much was used. So be sure and fill out the gas log that complies also with the same number you have on your invoice. For the air show, the 14th is going to be practice. The 15th, 16th is practice. I beg your pardon. 15 is practice, 16 and 17 Saturday and Sunday is the air show. So we need some volunteers to come out and help out the club. We can sit on the tailgate of the pickup truck and watch the air show. If someone comes in, we just spend our time trying to sell the Aero Club to them. Unfortunately, Sunday I will not be here. I'm going to leave at 6 a.m. or earlier. I'm headed for San Antonio if we got good weather in my airplane for a conference. Otherwise, I'm going to have to see if I can get a space available with American Airlines to Dallas and then drive it. So anyway, we're looking for people to help out Roger. He's going to need a lot of help on Sunday. We'll give you parking passes so you can get through the gate, and they won't direct you into a specific parking lot. We'll have parking across the street where you normally park. All those people for the air show as visitors will be parked elsewhere. So if you can help us out, I sent out an email, and I believe I included that to everybody, but anyway, I'm going to send out another one. So Carolyn said she would help out one of those days.
Yeah, I also have a question. Is there something like a T-shirt that you folks have, or a club shirt
No, we've been trying to
identify us
get
as
some
March
ball
Aero?
caps made up with the logo on it and March Aero Club. We were looking at T-shirts, but then it cost us money to get the stencil. But if you know, Terry Pratt's got the electronic people. They do a laser print on shirts. So I'm still working on that. It'll be a kind of a powder blue like the sweatshirt here on Gabe. And we're just going to have the Aero Club logo. We can put your name on it, or just March Aero Club. And we think about if we can sell those for $25 and for the club members, or $20, whatever it's going to cost us. We're thinking about doing that for some camaraderie.
Not before the show, though.
No, we're not going to get done before the show. No way.
Never mind.
Yeah.
What are the dates of the show?
The show is April 17th and 16th and 17th.
Same weekend as the Grand Prix, Long Beach.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, there's a couple other things going on that same
Something
weekend.
at a date festival or something out there that way too, I think.
Yeah. There's no other air shows locally. Parking and tie-ups are going to be enormous. So the main gate is closed till about 8 o'clock in the morning. Everybody lines up on Cactus, and the sheriff and the highway patrol is going to keep the traffic moving. So I find it easier even at 7 o'clock in the morning to come down Ellsworth and enter the gate on the main street. So the 3 gates that will be open will be Cactus, Riverside at Meyer Street, and Riverside at the far end that's always closed. So those are going to be the 3 gates, as far as I know, that will be open get the traffic on it and actually exit the same way. So we'll be exiting, get everybody off the gate, and you'll have police officers out here controlling the signals to get everybody moving. Yeah, now,
You said flyers, are they gonna have flyers or not?
flyers for passing out.
Yeah.
We may try and work on something like that, if we get marketing to do it for us. Yeah, we'll just do a bifold or something on both pages and cut it in, fold it in half a little bit. We'll work on that. I've just been inundated with contracting and pressure to keep things going and meetings. So we're hoping we get 555 up by I put down the 10th of April right now. And it's gonna be iffy for the weekend, because it's gonna have to get up and fly before we can put it online. So we got George. Where's George? Oh, hi, George. George, I got your name in along with Malcolm, set up for a room. I haven't heard back. And went to Lieutenant Major Fraser, I believe it is. Could be Lieutenant Colonel, I forgot. Lieutenant Colonel Fraser. Anyway, he's in charge of berthing. And so I gave him what you guys are flying and the date. So I have Friday and Saturday nights for both you guys, Malcolm and George. That's going to be no cost, from what I understand. Okay. Got you set up. Anybody else that comes in for the air show needs berthing will do it, except for those people who are just on a day, but it's only for the flyers. Any other questions? Okay, thanks.
We're also thinking about, say, John and I've talked about having a challenge coin for the Aero Club. And John has been doing a little bit of research on that and the cost and that type of thing. How many here would be interested in something like that? I know I would. Yeah.
What's the challenge coin? Explain what the challenge coin
It's where you challenge somebody. Yeah, it's I don't have mine with me, but it's how many here know what a challenge coin is? Yeah, okay, what it
A lot of
is.
people have these coins, you know, they're
Yeah.
your unit or whatever, and gotta have it when you go to the bar, you gotta buy the bar, things like that.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a bar. It could be a Coke. It could be anything. There are some rules about how you challenge somebody and all that. In the Air Force, I know that everybody would always be challenging people, and basically you have to get your coin down within, I think it's, well, it varies depending on the rules, but within 3 seconds you got to have your coin out and slap it down before that's 3 seconds are up after somebody has challenged you with it. If you get it down on the table before they do, then they have to buy you either a Coke or whatever. You decide to what that is. But if you can't get it out onto the table before those 3 seconds are up, then you're going to end up owing the other person that challenged you. It can be used for many different things. You can't, and then it's one of the rules is you can't throw it on the floor. If you throw it on the floor, then you end up having to buy everybody in the room. But what's neat about it is not so much just that as it is just the coins can really be neat. I mean, I've got probably about 20 of them throughout the years when I was flying for the Air Force that different places have given us because we were transporting them. One of the neatest ones was for the Air Force Band when we were taking them over to Europe on a tour. And that is just really a neat coin. And it's just neat to have those. You can put it in a little display case and just gives you, all the different people. It's it's a little more expensive than getting patches. A lot of the guys who fly for the military get patches from other units. And some people actually, that's a collection for them. Well, these coins do the same thing. I see a lot of people actually have a big collection of these things in all the different units around the world, and it can range anywhere from not just Air Force but Navy and Army, Marines have them, and they're really, really interesting. So we're kind of looking into that because that's one of the things you know, the Aero Club, we could have on there, you know, a pretty neat little coin. So, anyhow, all right, moving on. Okay, every meeting I usually go over the SOPs real quick, paragraph by paragraph. And as our SOPs say, everybody's supposed to read the SOPs. When you sign that little agreement letter when you first join the club, that's what you're saying, is that you are agreeing that you will read the SOPs. So right now we're on chapter 2 of pilot currency, and I need to quit because I wasn't able to come in to verify the first paragraph about the 200 hours to fly the T-34 down here. Pilots will less than, no, that's up higher. Required to see well, the manual of course is different now too, it's 117. A member must have 200 pilot in command and to include 25 hours of complex aircraft pilot and command time.
That's an old SOP, because the one that was changed is 125.
Well, see, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Where did you get that out? Is that just something that?
No, it's in the regulation.
Yeah, see,
That's 125.
okay, that's what I
The
was,
200 was set by Fred,
because I was gonna try to,
and that's an old SOP that you have there.
oh yeah, well, yes, it is.
But that's
Because
not
that's
the
the
one that
latest
was
one I've got.
Oh, the one I, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Marjorie, the other thing is the guy or girl didn't have any time in retractable
Yeah.
aircraft. They have to fly the T-34 for 10 hours.
For 10 hours, okay, okay, all right. So, did everybody hear that? Complex, high performance complex. And of course, anybody that's gone for the commercial pilot's rating, of course, that automatically fills that. The active pilot in command of any Aero Club airplane, if you have less than 200 pilot hours, then your sorties is every 60 days. Okay? Now, if you're over 200 hours, then it's the same as the FAA, which is every 90 days. Air Force is the one that dictates the 60 days one. Night flight means the time between official sunset and official sunrise. And let's see, yeah, you got to do, and of course everybody, you know that at nighttime when you do a sortie, it's a stop and go, and not just a touch and go. That's FAA that says that. Wind limitations, all pilots will ensure that the aircraft will be operated within the wind limitations. You know, that's pretty obvious.
Most restricted is students.
And yeah, the students are most restrictive, and of course, as always, you should have your own personal restrictions. I mean, if you think you can't handle, you know, even a 1 knot wind, then that's perfectly fine. That's if you don't think you can handle a crosswind landing of 2 knots, then don't fly the airplane. So, all right, any questions? Okay. All right, now this is I'm going to show a video, and this video, I don't know, a lot of you probably have seen it because it just came out recently. And according to the hits on YouTube, it's there's something like, you know, it's way up there. You know, 500,000 people have seen it. So if you've seen it, just bear with it. It does have some things in there that we're just covering real quick. But one of the things that I just want to bring up out of that video is that no matter how much you think you have done a thorough pre-flight planning for flying, especially cross-country, you may not necessarily have covered everything. Having a pre-flight checklist, and I don't mean the pre-flight checklist that you have that you're with you when you do the pre-flight on the airplane. I'm talking about a pre-flight checklist before you even go to the airplane. And that's basically what comes out on this. You know, you may have checked on everything, but this video will point out that there's some things that these individuals did not take in consideration. What the video is it's what they did is they flew an airplane. They took off at daytime. It was daytime all the time they were flying, but it was late afternoon. By the time they were coming into the airport that they planned to go into, it got dark on the ground. They didn't notice that. They should have thought of it, but they didn't really think about it. It was one of those kind of things where we are aware of something, but do you really know that there's something that could happen that you might be aware of, but you're not aware of it? That's kind of like what happened here. There were several things that came out of it, things they did not do during their pre-flight, or, you know, before they went out to the airplane. If you've seen this video, like I said, just look at it as what it's meant to be looked at. You know, it's meant to be looked at as a video that get to the video. I had a few things taking place this weekend that otherwise I would have had this thing already going, but yeah, well, my wife ended up in the hospital last night, so I was up all night last night with her, and so I was not able to fine-tune this thing like I like to do. Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, now, sound. Okay, no sound. We had it a little while ago. All right, that must mean this thing shut off. Oh, come on.
And what we did.
There we go.
Hi, I'm Jeff Van West, the director of Real World VFR. I also held down the instructor seat at the sim and in the Cessna, while Keith Smith flew the scenarios in front of the camera. Real World VFR isn't about doing everything perfectly. It reveals how we prepared, how the flight
no video.
played out in the real world, and what we did or didn't do that happened. In the end, everyone can learn something.
All right, so why do we not have a video up there?
However, happened on a deadhead way. Luckily, the cameras were running.
Okay, everything's just going just like normal. Why do we not have the video up there? It's probably because the... Oh, was it there? Oh, gee, okay. Yeah, I know. All right.
And caught how we ended up almost catastrophically low on an unplanned approach to Montpelier, Vermont just after sunset. The fact that it happened is both sobering and embarrassing, and the fact that we caught it on camera compels us to share it anyway. So here's the story of the accident that didn't happen, when two experienced pilots flew right into a classic black hole trap. Due to schedule and weather, we had to reposition an aircraft late in the afternoon to fly the planned night departure from Montpelier out of sequence with the rest of the flight. Now, we briefed our flight into Montpelier in the studio.
And of course, the town itself is just east.
Nestled in the hills, it should be pretty easy to find this one.
Very good. I see a short runway and a long runway, so let's have a look at the airport itself.
We'd also briefed and practiced the departure out of Montpelier in the black of night and surrounded by terrain.
So, looking at that for Montpelier, off of runway 5, we're going to climb on essentially runway heading, the 048 heading, to 2,100. That's nearly 1,000 feet AGL.
We'd even talked about the dangers of night approaches into other airports, such as Block Island, and the importance of visual approach indicators.
Block Island has runway 10 and 28. We have Packies on both runways. That's spectacular news. I'm actually more excited about the flight now than I was about 5 seconds ago.
If you have a visual approach slope indicator of some kind, then absolutely use it. So in our mind, we were well briefed, despite the fact that we had never specifically briefed the night approach into Montpelier. But then we weren't really thinking night approach when we launched because it was still daylight. Given that Keith would do all the flying, he offered this leg to me.
Okay, notice that little, okay, it just disappeared. That,
I accepted.
okay, notice the little thing down here. Pay attention to these things right here. And we'll just cover those real quick at the end of the video. And they'll put up several of them.
But I should have made a point that we were both tired from what had already been a long day. We both lacked in night proficiency, as this was the middle of summer. And I should have clarified our cockpit roles when we changed who was on the controls. Daylight dwindled as we flew, but we still weren't thinking night because the light above the horizon was bright. The airport is in a valley, and the post-frontal winds were just rocking the airplane. So I was a bit preoccupied. Keith later told me that he was thinking how glad he was not to have the responsibility for the upcoming gusty landing. We were now set up for a classic black hole approach, where the lack of references makes the airport appear closer than it actually is, and pilots tend to fly too low. Ironically, we even talk about the proximity of terrain and the hill we know is between us and the airport.
Not clearing this terrain by much. Not complaining though. I said at least 1,000 feet based on turn here and there.
Oh, it looks like we got a little ridge you got to cross. But here's what happens next. I end up excessively low on a long, flat approach. I have a nagging feeling something is wrong and ask Keith about a BACI. Oh, BACI on that side, huh?
Apparently not.
This makes him look out his window, where a ground light passes by, and call up synthetic vision on the iPad, just as I add power and level off. Steve, too. Lower than up to there. That's better. He still doesn't mention our altitude until I start to ease down again, still a bit flat, just as we cross that hill and it passes outside his window.
Oh, wow, there's some pretty good trees right below us.
Yep. I was looking for a BACI.
Control speeds right out, let me know.
Oh, sorry. There's not blood right down the road. That was kind of crappy.
Oh shit. That worked out. My only concern was the altitude. I should have said something sooner.
Yeah.
It was only when I looked at the window, we were clearing terrain by maybe 200 or 300 feet.
Yeah.
That I just hadn't seen in front of us. It was just as obvious, not having the BACI stuff.
Yeah.
But it did feel like we were low eventually.
Yeah, and that's why I started leveling off. But I'm like, God, that just feels wrong.
Exactly. So I got to the synthetic vision too late to, as I turned it on, we were just passing the train.
Well, there's a good example of a black hole without a BACI. Now, were we really only 200 to 300 feet from that hill? We were back there the next day, so we used the data from the iPad to refly the exact same path and altitude in daylight. It's hard to tell with the fisheye effect of the camera, but we passed 100 to 200 feet above those trees. We're below the hill on the left. Any lower the night before, and we would have seen the runway vanish behind the hill between us and the airport. Montpelier has no BACI for this runway, probably because of this hill on final. Had we briefed the night approach, we should have caught the lack of a BACI, which would have tipped us off. Even if we had flown an instrument approach into Montpelier, we could have fallen victim to the illusion in that final descent from NBA to the runway. You know, it's easy to look at that video after the fact and say, I'd never get that look. Or, I always fly an instrument approach into an unfamiliar airport after sunset. But the truth is, I know half a dozen names of better aviators than I'll ever be, who got tripped up by some combination of events that ended badly. I'll never know exactly what happened because there were no cameras and they're not around to tell me the tale. But in this case, cameras were running and it ended well. So we get to share one more lesson learned in real world VFR.
Okay, they were pretty close. They were below the mountain on the one side there. They'd just been off center.
Hi, I'm Jeff.
Come on. They would have plowed into the side of a mountain. Oh, come on. Why do you have to start all over again? Gosh. I opened you up everywhere. Okay. One of the things that, if you notice that, of course, the little statements down at the bottom of the screen went up at the top of the screen depending on how they wanted, where you could see them. But one of the things, this was the unplanned part of it. They didn't brief for a night approach whatsoever because they weren't thinking that. They were thinking about the alternate fields they could go into going in at night, but not the place that they were actually going into. So they never really briefed it. They were not thinking night approach at all because it was daytime. That's one of the things you would think, well, gosh, you know it's going to be dark, but you know, sometimes if you're just not, you know, you're up there and the sun's shining and, you know, it can just kind of lure you into a place like what happened to these guys here. If they had briefed correctly and had paid attention to being in there at night, they would have noticed that there was no BACIs at all. And it became a surprise for them. And then, as they were taxiing out, they switched pilot and command. That's one of the things that, before you go, I mean, one of the things that I learned in the Air Force was that unless there's an emergency, try not to do anything that was not planned out on the ground before you left, especially when you're doing which we did in the 141, formation flying. And we used to fly close formation, pretty much like the T-34s do, only ours was a 4-engine jet. And you didn't make mistakes. And I'm sure the C-130s, they did the same thing. And, you know, like I said, if you have an emergency, that's one thing. But if you're just having a normal routine flight, don't do something that you didn't plan on doing. They switched pilot and command, and in it itself, there's nothing wrong with that, I suppose. I mean, I've seen that happen, but that was in a multi-cockpit airplane. They had a flight engineer, and you know, usually the cockpit had 4 or 5 people in it. In this, you had 2 pilots, and they switched places. Let's see. Okay, one of the things, this is during the briefing, while they're taxiing out. During the PIC briefing, they ignored the fact that it had been a long day. They mentioned it in the video there, and they had a day that they have done a couple of other legs on that particular day. This particular leg was basically a deadhead leg. It was not part of the scenarios that they were doing for that day. How many here know that the Aero Club has a crew duty day? Yeah, some, I know some do. Yeah, you do have a day that where you are limited. The maximum Aero Club duty day is 12 hours. That's for single pilot. And it's, what is it, 16 hours for two. Flight duty day begins with the pilot's reports to the Aero Club or to their duty or their job. So like if Andrew is in court all day and then he comes out here and flies that evening, he's got to count when he started that morning in court. So that includes your, if you're flying by yourself, 12 hours. It was like that in the Air Force too. A lot of the guys who are office workers in the Air Force but also fly, they were the restrictive person that on the crew. They could not fly the airplane unless you know, they were within the crew duty day. Minimum crew rest. Yes, we do have crew rest here in the Aero Club too. It should be 10 hours after an 8-hour day or duty time, and 12 hours or more for 8 hours of duty time, or over 8 hours. So like if it took you 12 hours to fly from here to wherever you're going, you're supposed to have 12 hours of crew rest time. Any questions? Okay, subpar for proficiency. It was summertime, so they didn't fly a lot at nighttime at that point. The same thing can happen here. I know most of you are not night qualified. We do have a few here that are. The T-34 drivers typically are not night because we only have one T-34 that can actually fly at night. The rest of them can't. But if you are night qualified, that's just one of the things you need to keep your currency up, especially if you think that you're going to fly across country that might end up getting you into a place after dark. Let's see, Jason, you're night qualified, yeah. And just be aware that, you know, in the summertime as we get longer days, it gets harder. And of course, any of this stuff, you know, you have to stay on top of it. And then, of course, you got the 60 and the 90-day sortie that I talked about earlier. Remember, currency versus proficiency. We talked about that one of the safety meetings, that there is a difference. You could be current and legal, but doesn't necessarily mean you're proficient. You know, it might be that you need to fly the airplane once every other week or once a month. If you find that you get rusty fast, not flying the airplane after a month, maybe you should think about coming out and flying the airplane at least once a month, preferably more than that. Okay, and unclear roads. They didn't make it clear who was going to do what. One of the big dangers in any two or even a four cockpit airplane, but 4 seats, 2 seats, and you got one or 2 pilots up front. Just make sure before you leave the ground that you have made some kind of arrangement as to what your roles are going to be. If it means you're not going to do anything, you're just going to sit there and not do anything unless we have an emergency, then do that. But stick to it too. A lot of times I used to fly with a friend of mine that used to be in the club, and we used to fly a lot, and we always did, I did the role of, when I was sat in the right seat, I did the role of reading the checklist. And he did the flipping of the switches and paying attention to flying the airplane, and then vice versa. And we made sure that we made that clear before we took off. And then same thing with emergency. As a flight engineer in the Air Force, I read all the checklists, so I was used to doing it that way anyhow. Air Force policy wasn't a multi-cockpit airplane, is that if you have a flight engineer, is that the flight engineer reads all checklists anytime the airplane is moving. If you're sitting there on engine start or engine shutdown, then the co-pilot ran the checklist, but all other checklists were run by the flight engineer. When you have a two-man cockpit, then it's usually the co-pilot. In some cases, I don't know, Randy, did the KC-135, did they let the loadmaster run any checklist or anything like that? Or not loadmaster, but the boom operator?
Yes, for some things, yes.
Yeah. Because there has been some wingtips dinging of an airplane because they were reading the checklist instead of paying attention to what was going on. So, any questions here? Okay, changing conditions. Okay, they oblivious to landing, fill, turning, night. Of course, we talked about that. It was still day and all that. The airport was in a valley. Well, anytime, you know, the sun goes down, of course, anything down in a valley is going to be the first thing that gets dark. As I got down there, don't get lost in having fun and flying. Remember, you still have to land. Yeah, it's one of those things where you might, you know, you get so caught up in flying the aircraft and all the things you're doing out there that you got to remember you're going to have to get someplace to land. And I actually have seen it where in a single engine airplane where this is in the civilian side, more in here, but where the person totally didn't think about it and it turned dark, and fortunately they did get on the ground, but their situation was similar to these guys where they almost ended up crashing the airplane because they just all of a sudden, oh, that's right, oh yeah, and then they started scrambling trying to get the airplane down safely. This was up Northern California. So have fun flying the airplane, but remember, you know, you've got takeoff to landing, you got a checklist for everything. Timely distraction, of course the winds were picking up, so he got distracted by trying to keep the airplane flying safely. So he got distracted and not concentrating on the approach. We have distractions all over the place. It's something everybody knows. Flight examiners and instructors love to do distractions. So that's one of the things that I assume that John, when he does an annual check on you guys, that he tries to distract you. I suppose that's par for the course. Visual illusions, lack of references. That's one of the things at nighttime it gets to be very dangerous. It can even be dangerous during the daytime. And as a safety officer, I do read reports over and over again, and when I was in the Air Force, same thing. During the daytime, you would think, oh gosh, you got, you know, these points that you can look at. But you know, sometimes being distracted and not paying attention to what's going on around you, I've seen pilots in the 141, as we were flying even the locals out here, we're out here, when you fly the same local over and over again, you know, you do the same thing, but I've seen pilots sit there and go right past where they were supposed to make their turn into the runway. And because they weren't paying attention and they were being distracted for a lot of different reasons. When you're in an airplane by yourself, single airplane like this, you can't really afford to do that. You need to be more cognizant, especially when you're flying by yourself. References here in Southern California do disappear. Not because of earthquakes necessarily, although that could happen, I suppose, but primarily smog in the summertime. And I don't need, I've harped on it before, how when you're flying a late afternoon and you're especially flying into the sun, you're not going to see anything. All your reference points are going to completely disappear, and you're not going to be able to see anything. Again, be aware of that. let's see. Oh yeah, and this was not in the video, but they didn't even talk about that. Bob brought it up, and John brought it up. What about the angle of that runway? I mean, when they were coming in on the approach, that runway looked like it was, it looked kind of funny. Yeah, it looked like they were low, and I'm surprised they didn't bring it up in the video. But that's one of the things that it was pretty obvious they were pretty low. See, I don't remember what they said the length of runway was, but in a Cessna, well, they were in 172, so they're not, they weren't going to about to run off the end of the runway necessarily, although George has probably seen it, like he talked about tonight. Even single engine airplanes can run off the end of the runway, but yeah, be aware of your angle of your runway. There is some good charts that are in the FAR AIM book that has those things in there.
The other thing was interesting, if they level off 2,100 feet instead of 2,500 feet, which would get them a master altitude.
Yeah, yeah.
They're really at the wrong altitude.
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of interesting the way they. I thought it was kind of funny because they didn't, when they leveled off, I was like going, well, why did they level off at that altitude? I don't know. It just seemed kind of funny to me that there was a, when you have the chart, the airport facilities directory, it gives you a lot of information. You also have your charts. You also, obviously most people have for-flight and things like that, and they, those charts, they tell you everything. It's kind of, I don't know. I know Rich Martindale, he goes a lot of cross countries, and he sends me his flight plan, like what the Air Force wants you guys to do when you fly across country, and he, of course, I know you have it all off of what, for-flight and some of that stuff, but it gives you a lot of information. But the information doesn't do you any good unless you read it and pay attention to it. And also, don't assume just because you go to the same place over and over again. Don't assume anything. That's in aviation. I've seen too many people have accidents because they assumed something. Okay, any questions?
Roger,
Yeah.
why don't you discuss with us less experienced pilots, for this guys who might find himself on the runway, the same similar situation, without a visual slope indicator or precision approach? How can you estimate your glide path?
Well, okay, you got, how many here know what a BACI is, which they didn't have, a lot of the airports have a BACI, which it's shown on the airport facilities directory, and the BACIs are supposed to keep you just, if you got, you have white and then you have red, and if you have both of them balanced or you have a green, then you are right on the glide slope for that runway. If you're white, then you're too high. If you're red, which means exactly what it says, the old word is what? It's red, you're dead if you're red. No, red and you're dead, or something like that. And if you're too low, then it's going to show up red. That's what they were looking for on the video, and which they did not have. And they assumed it was because of that hill.
Roger, what I'm saying is if you don't have a BACI or any kind of a visual slope indication,
Yeah.
or if there's no precision approach, how can you estimate what your glide path is?
Well, okay, that's kind of like what this, that's actually what this thing is. I mean, although this isn't the best picture, there is it's something that you got, it's what you have up here and how you visualize a runway. If you, when you go up with your instructor, he tries to take you to runways which are short, like George's runway, and because our runway isn't a real measure, really. Runway 32 would not be a measure because it's 13,000 feet long, and it's what, 150 feet wide. Our little runway, you know, John tries to get you that sight picture. It's something that you do have to learn. It's something that you got to know what that runway, how it looks, and it's a visual thing. I don't know. That's something John could answer better than I can.
I'm looking at it this way.
Yeah, when you're too low, the runway's not. You're not going to. It's like really flat. When you're too high, you're going to be. It's almost like how when you look at a runway like this and you're looking down on it. Obviously, you're flying over it. So what you have to do is get that measure and get used to the idea of seeing that runway depending on where you're at. Because most runways that we land on do not have BACIs or an approach.
It's some kind of like formula, like formula for altitude of the airport versus your altitude setback, right? So some kind. 3 to 1. 3 to 1. Yeah, I think that's what the Colonel's looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, that's something that John, that's part of the teaching.
Yeah, basically what Bob was saying. If it looks like this, then
Yeah.
you're high, and if it looks way like this, it's real flat.
Yeah.
And you may be low,
Yeah.
Isn't it something that you can see out over the numbers over your cowling, and if you can read the numbers, you're pretty much in the ballpark?
Not necessarily, yeah.
But at night, you lose a lot of those visual references.
Yeah,
This is a poor diagram.
that's what
All
it
it
is.
does is show you
Yeah.
what the pappies are telling you.
Yeah.
It doesn't show you what the runway looks like because
Right.
it's high or low.
I know.
This is not well drawn.
Yeah, I could not find the one that's in the far aim, and at the time I got
It's
this.
in the
It's-
key hack.
And Ron Machado's book.
Oh, well, yeah, I know, it's in
It's in
Rod's,
the key
yeah.
hack.
Yeah, because I have Rod's book. It really shows a good picture of it. But, I mean, I don't know how to answer that question other than the fact that that's something you have to learn.
All right, so this guy's obviously had their iPad, right? They had GPS, that's how they recreated the flight.
Yeah,
So I would venture that most people today fly with at least a GPS when they go to an airplane. So if you have a GPS, you can calculate fairly easy how far away from the field. So now you have distance, calculate miles. You have an altimeter, so you know the airfield elevation. You can figure out how high above your airfield is. So in just rough calculations, we calculate you want to be, for every mile an hour, you want to be 300 feet up. That's real rough and gives you a 3-degree glide path. So it's a quick little cross check when you go somewhere to see that you're in the proper glide path.
yeah.
3 miles.
It should be 900 feet above airport elevation.
I've got a question. My question is, if you're flying the pattern, how hard is it to get too high or too low? Because if you're doing it by I guess using the cues on the airplane, the struts and everything, and you're flying 1,800 to 2,000 feet above the runway elevation, how hard is it to get off? I mean, I can understand if you're coming into maybe like a long approach or something, but if you're doing a pattern. How is it possible, really, to go off? That's just my question.
If you're flying the pattern correctly, however, you could still get yourself too low by when you're turning final. I've seen that happen lots of times. I know with myself, I do it by just eye coordination. That's the way I've always done it, and I've never ever had a problem with it. You can do it the way Bill talks about.
Well, I think more like what Bill's talking about, on a dark slope like that, those guys could calculate
Yeah,
fast.
yeah.
Way too low.
See, at nighttime, you're talking something a little bit different, and you don't necessarily have the visual cues to be able to do it. I know. I mean, I've been into Saudi Arabia, and at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's literally black, and the only thing that lights is the runway. That's all you have.
That's
And
usually desert, it's flat.
yeah, well, but you could still fly the airplane right into the ground.
The key at night is that you lose your depth perception. That's the
Yeah. Well, that's without visual cues. The airport looks closer too than it really is. And I I like the way Bill put it. It's something that if you fly at night, and I don't know what John, what you do when you check people out at night, but
Go to the big runway and they got a pappy.
well, yeah, but our airplanes don't usually land in places that have that luxury. Where I'm from, up Northern California, no runway has that stuff except for Santa Rosa and Ukiah.
Roger,
Yeah,
is there a sign-in sheet?
yes, it's right back there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, any more questions?
The other thing
Yeah.
that's interesting.
FAA trivia, as of the first of the month, the airport facilities directory no longer exists.
Yeah, that's right.
It's called the chart supplement.
And that's what they're gonna call it.
Yeah, the book is still there.
It's
but
still
changed
there,
the
but they
name.
changed the name. Okay.
Still
okay.
the ugly green book.
Yeah, everybody hear that? Yeah. Okay, they still have this thing that's the emergency getting it right when things go wrong. They're still having it here in Southern California at Irvine now, at Doubletree by the Hilton, Irvine Spectrum.
They're not coming to Ontario anymore?
They already had it at Ontario. Yeah, so they're still having, you have to go to Irvine now in order to see it. So that's just information if you want to go to that. And it is a wings program too. So it counts towards your,
How come these meetings don't count for wings?
because they're not long enough.
Yes, they are.
Not according to what I talked to them about it, and they said it has to be at least an hour and a half
It is
long.
not.
That's what I was
They're
told.
filling you full of smoke. I do wings programs all
Yeah.
the time. 45 minutes is the bare minimum.
Huh.
Your 1 hour
Well.
program is